I stood there, a porcelain doll in a white gown, the picture of bridal innocence, yet my soul was a cauldron of simmering rage. As I connected my phone to the projector, a sinister calm washing over me, I watched the blood drain from Julian's face, his handsome features contorting in a mask of dawning horror. His mistress, a predatory blonde I'd only known by her Instagram handle, made a desperate, clumsy break for the exit, her designer stilettos hammering against the marble floor, a frantic tattoo of impending doom. Julian's mother, Patricia, a woman who'd always regarded me with the thinly veiled disgust one reserves for finding a stray hair in their perfectly prepared soufflé, unleashed a screech that could have shattered Waterford crystal. But it was the coup de grace I was about to deliver, the exquisitely timed detonation of truth, that would truly bring the house down. As the carefully curated images flashed onto the screen, revealing a reality no one in that room could have ever predicted, Julian, the smug billionaire who believed he held all the power, began to visibly unravel before the shocked, disbelieving eyes of our 300 guests. "Hi, I'm Charlotte," and everyone in their gilded, utterly detached world believed I was a simpleton, a naive little charity case who'd somehow managed to bag a billionaire. They couldn't, in their wildest imaginations, conceive of the truth, of who I really was, of the calculated depths I was capable of plumbing. They dismissed me, treated me with casual disdain, because they believed I was insignificant. They thought I was a pawn. But my wedding day wasn't a celebration of love. It was a meticulously planned battlefield, years in the making. And trust me, darlings, I came armed to the teeth with the kind of ammunition that money can't buy. What unfolded next would rip apart families, obliterate reputations, and exhume secrets that had been festering for decades beneath layers of obscene wealth and carefully constructed lies. If you want to witness how one spectacularly imploded wedding ignited a chain reaction that brought down an entire empire built on deceit, then stick with me until the bitter, glorious end. And for the love of all that is deliciously dramatic, slam that subscribe button right now. Because this story is a roller coaster of twists and turns so sharp, so unexpected, they'll leave you breathless. I promise you, skip even a single second, and you'll miss the key, the crucial detail that unlocks the whole damn beautiful mess. Let me peel back the layers, reveal the truth of who I really am, because that's where this entire elegant nightmare began. Everyone in that glittering, superficial city knew me as Charlotte Hayes, a seemingly unremarkable graphic designer who lived in a cramped, one-bedroom apartment barely big enough to swing a cat, and drove a beat-up Honda Civic that was older than most of my fleeting relationships. I wore clothes from Target, endured a soul-crushing 9-to-5 job designing banner ads for dental implants, and was perpetually drowning in the quicksand of student loan debt. Or at least, that's the carefully constructed illusion I so diligently projected to the world. It was all a facade, a meticulously crafted lie I'd been living, breathing, and perfecting for 8 long, arduous years. The unvarnished truth? My real name is Charlotte Marie Westbrook. And if you know anything about money, about raw, unadulterated power, and the delicate, often brutal dance of societal hierarchy, that name should stop you dead in your tracks. It should make you tremble. My family is the Westbrook Empire. We own prime real estate in 3 states, controlling entire city skylines. Our influence stretches from coast to coast. My father's face graces the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines with monotonous regularity, his pronouncements treated as gospel by the financial elite. My mother sits on the boards of 5 Fortune 500 corporations, wielding influence that subtly yet decisively shapes global markets. I grew up in a sprawling mansion with 12 bedrooms, a ballroom that could accommodate a small orchestra, and a staff of 20 people catering to our every imaginable whim. We had a chef who could whip up a Michelin-star meal on a moment's notice, a sommelier who curated a wine cellar that would make Bacchus weep with envy, and a groundskeeper who manicured our gardens with the obsessive precision of a brain surgeon. I'm heiress to a fortune so vast, it's beyond the comprehension of most people. It's the kind of wealth that buys not just things, but influence, access, and impunity. So why the elaborate charade? Why was I pretending to be poor, living in a glorified shoebox and working a job that barely covered my ramen budget? Why would anyone willingly trade in a life of unimaginable luxury for one of deliberate austerity? Because when I was 19 years old, I witnessed firsthand the corrosive power of money, how it could corrupt, destroy, and leave nothing but shattered souls and broken dreams in its wake. I watched it happen to my older sister, Jennifer. Jennifer was beautiful, intelligent, and possessed a trusting heart that ultimately became her tragic downfall. She fell head over heels for a man who seemed, at first glance, too good to be true. He was charming, devastatingly handsome, romantic in that old-fashioned, swoon-worthy way, showered her with lavish attention, and proposed after a whirlwind, fairy-tale 6-month courtship. My parents, seasoned veterans in the relentless battlefield of wealth, warned her to be cautious, to look beyond the superficial charm, to dig beneath the carefully constructed surface. But Jennifer, blinded by the intoxicating illusion of love, was convinced she'd found her prince charming. She refused to heed their warnings, dismissing them as the cynical musings of people who'd forgotten what it was like to feel real, genuine emotion. They married in a lavish ceremony that cost more than most people's homes, a spectacle of white lace, overflowing champagne fountains, and enough diamonds to make a pirate green with envy. It was a scene straight out of a Hollywood movie, a testament to the intoxicating power of wealth and the seductive allure of a happily ever after. 2 years later, Jennifer's fairy tale imploded in a spectacular, soul-crushing fashion. She discovered the devastating truth. He'd never loved her. He'd meticulously researched our family, identified her as the perfect target, and married her for one reason and one reason only, our money. He was a parasite, a con artist of the highest order, who'd expertly preyed on her vulnerability and naivete. He spent 2 years playing the devoted husband, slowly but surely gaining access to her accounts, her trust funds, her entire financial empire. He charmed his way into her confidence, manipulated her emotions, and systematically isolated her from her family and friends. Then, with the cold, calculated precision of a seasoned grifter, he emptied everything and vanished into thin air, leaving behind nothing but a trail of broken promises and shattered dreams. We're talking about millions of dollars, just gone, as if swallowed by the earth without a trace. Vanished. We hired private investigators, high-powered lawyers, forensic accountants, anyone and everyone we could find who possessed the skills and resources to track him down and bring him to justice. They scoured the globe, chasing shadows and dead-end leads, following whispers and hunches that led nowhere. They never found him. He simply ceased to exist, as if he'd never been more than a figment of Jennifer's imagination. But the money, as significant as it was, paled in comparison to the irreparable damage he inflicted on my sister's fragile soul. Jennifer retreated into herself, becoming a ghost of her former vibrant self. The light in her eyes flickered and then died, leaving behind only a vacant, haunted expression. She stopped talking, not because she physically couldn't, but because she simply didn't want to. She'd placed her trust in someone completely, utterly, and he'd systematically and deliberately destroyed her. He'd taken everything from her, leaving her empty and broken. Now, she spends her days sitting by the window, staring out at the world with vacant, unseeing eyes, lost in a silent world of her own making, a world where betrayal and heartbreak reign supreme. Sometimes I visit her, trying to break through the impenetrable wall of grief that surrounds her, telling her about my day, sharing mundane details of my fabricated life. But she just looks at me with those empty eyes, a constant, heartbreaking reminder of the devastation that greed and deceit can wreak. She is a living, breathing cautionary tale. That's what money did to her. It painted a target on her back, making her a vulnerable pawn in someone else's twisted, predatory game. It stripped her of her innocence and left her scarred for life. So, at 19, standing at the precipice of my own life, I made a vow, a solemn, unbreakable promise to myself. If I ever allowed myself to fall in love, that person would love me for who I was, for the person beneath the money, the titles, the expectations, not for the zeros in my bank account or the power associated with my family name. I shed my gilded identity like a snake shedding its skin, creating a completely fabricated persona, a carefully constructed disguise designed to protect me from the vultures and the fortune hunters. I reinvented myself. I moved to a different city, far from the prying eyes and knowing whispers of the Westbrook name. A city where I could be just Charlotte, not an heiress, not a billionaire's daughter, just a regular person trying to make her way in the world. I got a real job, a real apartment, a real life, stripped of all the privileges and trappings of wealth. I embraced anonymity, finding a strange sense of freedom in being just another face in the crowd. And for 8 years, I was just Charlotte, trying to navigate the complexities of a normal life, experiencing the joys and sorrows of everyday existence, free from the suffocating weight of my family's expectations. I thought I was safe. Then I met him. His name was Julian Pierce. And God, he was everything I thought I wanted, everything I'd been searching for, everything my carefully constructed persona craved. I was hunched over my laptop at a bustling coffee shop, wrestling with a particularly challenging design project, a deadline looming over my head like a guillotine, when he slid into the seat across from me, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he flashed me a disarming, perfectly calibrated smile. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, his voice a warm, resonant rumble that sent a shiver, or what I thought was a shiver of attraction, down my spine. We talked for 6 hours that day, lost in a whirlwind of conversation and shared laughter, discovering common interests and seemingly compatible values. He was charming, witty, and possessed a seemingly genuine curiosity about my life. He listened intently, making me feel seen and heard in a way I hadn't experienced before. He told me he was a tech entrepreneur, that he'd built his company from the ground up with nothing but hard work, unwavering determination, and a healthy dose of self-belief. He painted a picture of himself as a self-made man, a bootstrap success story who'd overcome adversity and carved his own path in the world. He said he believed in earning everything you had, that success wasn't handed out on a silver platter. It was earned through sweat, grit, and unwavering dedication. He espoused the virtues of hard work and the importance of integrity, values that resonated deeply with my own fabricated ideals. I fell for every carefully crafted word, every calculated gesture, every perfectly timed compliment. I was completely, utterly, and devastatingly duped. We dated for 2 years, 2 years of what I genuinely believed was real, authentic love. 2 years of carefully orchestrated manipulation. He was a master puppeteer, and I was his most willing marionette. He'd bring me wilting bouquets from the bodega down the street, their imperfections somehow endearing, their lack of extravagance a testament to his supposed lack of wealth. We'd cook dinner together in my cramped kitchen, bumping elbows and laughing as we inevitably set off the smoke alarm, filling the tiny apartment with the acrid smell of burnt garlic and shared memories. He'd hold me close at night, whispering sweet nothings about our future, painting a vivid picture of a life filled with love, laughter, and unwavering devotion. He promised me a life of happiness, a life free from the burdens of wealth and the constraints of societal expectations. I allowed myself to believe that I'd finally found someone who loved me, for the flawed, imperfect person beneath the carefully constructed facade. I was so naive, so incredibly, irrevocably stupid. But then I met his family, and the carefully constructed illusion began to crack, revealing the rot and decay festering beneath the surface. The cracks widened with each interaction, each subtle insult, each carefully veiled threat. His mother's name was Patricia, and from the moment she laid eyes on me, I knew she despised me with every fiber of her being. Her eyes, cold and calculating, sized me up like a piece of livestock, her expression a mixture of disdain and barely concealed disgust. The first time Julian brought me to their house, this obscenely large estate with imposing gates, a security system that rivaled Fort Knox, and armed guards patrolling the perimeter, Patricia looked me up and down as if I were a piece of lint she'd found clinging to her designer suit, an unwelcome imperfection in her meticulously curated world. She actually had the audacity to ask me if my dress was from a thrift store, her voice dripping with condescension, her words laced with venom. When I, in my foolish attempt at honesty, said yes, she let out a sharp, brittle laugh, a sound devoid of warmth or genuine amusement. Not a kind laugh, a cruel, mocking one that echoed through the cavernous foyer, bouncing off the marble floors and the crystal chandeliers, a symphony of disdain. It was a sound that chipped away at my carefully constructed sense of self, exposing the insecurities and vulnerabilities I'd worked so hard to conceal. His father, George, was even worse. He wouldn't even acknowledge my existence, wouldn't even deign to make eye contact, treating me as if I were invisible, a ghost haunting his perfectly ordered world. During that excruciating first dinner, I desperately tried to make conversation, attempting to bridge the gap of awkward silence that hung heavy in the air like a suffocating fog. I asked him about his business, about his hobbies, about anything that might elicit a response beyond a grunt or a dismissive shrug. He answered in curt, one-word responses, his eyes glued to his plate, as if the silverware held the secrets of the universe. He ate with a grim, determined focus, ignoring my presence as if I were nothing more than an annoying insect buzzing around his head. After dinner, I overheard him muttering to Julian, his voice dripping with disapproval. "Really? That's the best you could do? You couldn't find anyone, more presentable?" His words were like a slap in the face, a stinging rebuke that left me reeling. I pretended not to hear, forcing myself to maintain a semblance of composure, but Julian just shrugged, his face a mask of uncomfortable indifference. He offered no defense, no reassurance, no sign that he cared about how his parents' behavior affected me. The subtle cruelty escalated over time, becoming more blatant, more malicious, more insidious. It was a slow, deliberate erosion of my self-worth, a carefully orchestrated campaign designed to break me down and make me feel like I didn't belong. Patricia would grab at my clothes, offering unsolicited critiques of everything from the cut to the fabric, her words like tiny daggers, each one piercing my carefully constructed armor. She delighted in pointing out my flaws, real or imagined, making me feel inadequate and unattractive. Once, she threw away my favorite winter coat, a hand-me-down from my college days, because she said it was embarrassing to be seen with me wearing it, that I was a reflection on her and her family, a walking, talking symbol of their shame. She tossed it into the trash with a casual flick of her wrist, as if it were nothing more than a discarded tissue. She made me sit at a separate table during family dinners because I didn't match the aesthetic of their meticulously curated dining room, as if I were a mismatched piece of furniture, an eyesore that disrupted the carefully constructed harmony of their opulent surroundings. She'd introduce me to their friends as Julian's little experiment, a condescending label that stripped me of my dignity and reduced me to nothing more than a curiosity, a temporary amusement. When I tried to confide in Julian, to express how deeply his mother's treatment wounded me, how her words and actions chipped away at my self-esteem, he'd sigh and roll his eyes, dismissing my feelings with a wave of his hand. "She's just protective," he'd say, his voice laced with exasperation, his words betraying a lack of empathy. "You're being too sensitive, Charlotte. You need to toughen up. You need to learn to ignore her." And then there was Sophia Martinez. Julian called her his best friend and business partner, the one person he could always count on, his confidant and trusted advisor. They'd known each other since college, forging a bond that seemed unbreakable, a connection that transcended mere friendship. She had unrestricted access to every aspect of his life, his house, his office, his schedule. She was a constant presence, a shadow that never seemed to fade. She'd waltz into his apartment without knocking, as if she owned the place, making herself at home with an ease that bordered on possessiveness. She even had her own key, a privilege I hadn't even been offered, a subtle but significant indication of her importance in his life. When I questioned it, Julian brushed it off with a dismissive laugh, his eyes flashing with annoyance. "We're basically siblings," he said, his tone laced with impatience. "Stop being so insecure, Charlotte. You're reading too much into things. You're being irrational." But the way she looked at him wasn't sisterly, and the way she looked at me was pure, unadulterated hatred, a silent declaration of war. Her eyes, dark and piercing, held a malevolence that sent shivers down my spine. Sophia would touch Julian constantly, a casual intimacy that bordered on possessive, a subtle assertion of her claim on him. She'd place her hand on his arm, lean close to whisper in his ear, laugh a little too loudly at everything he said, as if she were performing for an audience, vying for his attention. She even had the gall to call me Julian's little charity project to my face, a barb designed to humiliate me, to remind me of my perceived insignificance. Once, at a particularly ostentatious dinner party, she announced to a group of their wealthy friends, her voice dripping with sarcasm, "Julian likes to rescue things. Stray dogs, struggling artists, broke girlfriends. He has such a big heart." Everyone laughed, the sound echoing in my ears like a chorus of condemnation, a symphony of ridicule. I felt my face flush with shame, my carefully constructed composure crumbling under the weight of their judgment. Julian didn't defend me, didn't even offer a token protest. He just smiled uncomfortably and quickly changed the subject, leaving me to stand there, exposed and humiliated, a pariah in their exclusive circle. I should have left then. Every red flag was there, flapping wildly in the wind, screaming at me to run, to escape the toxic environment and save myself from further heartache. But I was blinded by love, or rather, by the idealized version of Julian I'd created in my mind, a fantasy built on lies and wishful thinking. And I kept telling myself that if I just tried harder, if I just proved myself worthy, his family would eventually accept me, that their initial disapproval was just a test, a hurdle I needed to overcome to prove my love and commitment. I was so desperate to believe that someone could love me without knowing about my money, without being influenced by my family's wealth, that I ignored every warning sign, every flashing neon light that screamed danger. 1 month before our wedding, Patricia cornered me in the opulent powder room at their house. A room adorned with gold-plated fixtures, silk wallpaper, and a vanity overflowing with expensive perfumes and cosmetics. It was a gilded cage, a symbol of their wealth and power. We'd just endured a family dinner where she'd spent 2 excruciating hours critiquing everything from my posture to my laugh. Her words like acid dissolving my self-esteem, stripping away my confidence and leaving me feeling raw and exposed. I was washing my hands, trying to regain some semblance of composure, when she sauntered in and deliberately locked the door behind her, trapping me, her eyes glinting with malice, her lips curved into a chillingly cold smile. "You'll never be good enough for this family," she said quietly, her voice a low, menacing hum that sent shivers down my spine. Her unnerving calmness made the threat all the more terrifying. "We're only tolerating you because Julian insists on this little charade," she continued, her words dripping with disdain. "But marriages fall apart, dear. And when this one does, and it will, you'll leave with nothing. Not a penny, not a memory, nothing but the clothes on your back." She grabbed my arm then, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin hard enough to leave crescent-shaped marks, a physical manifestation of her contempt. "After you sign those papers at the wedding, you belong to us," she hissed, her grip tightening. "You'll smile when we tell you to smile. You'll speak when we allow it, and you'll disappear when we're done with you, like a discarded toy. Do you understand?" I looked at her hand on my arm, at the angry red marks her nails were leaving, a physical representation of her power and control. Then I looked into her cold, dead eyes and smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that mirrored her own, a smile that hinted at the darkness that lurked beneath my carefully constructed facade. "Patricia?" I said softly, my voice laced with a quiet menace that seemed to catch her off guard, momentarily disrupting her carefully constructed composure. "Do you know what happens to people who threaten a Westbrook?" She looked confused, her brow furrowing in a flicker of uncertainty. "What are you talking about? You're nothing but a—" "You're about to find out," I interrupted, my voice unwavering, my gaze unwavering, my resolve hardening like steel. I didn't offer any further explanation. I simply washed my hands, dried them carefully with a pristine white towel, and walked out, leaving her standing there, speechless and unnerved, her carefully constructed world beginning to crumble around her. But that was the moment everything changed. That was when the naive, insecure girl who desperately sought acceptance died. That was when I stopped being the victim and started planning my revenge, a meticulously crafted plan that would bring their entire empire crashing down around them. 2 weeks before my wedding, I hired a private investigator. His name was Carlos, and he was the best in the business, a legend in the shadowy world of secrets and lies. He was discreet, resourceful, and possessed an uncanny ability to unearth the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. I didn't hire him to investigate Julian, not initially. I hired him to investigate his family, to peel back the layers of their carefully constructed facade, to expose the darkness that lurked beneath their polished exterior. Something about them felt wrong, fundamentally corrupt, dangerous. I needed to know what I was really dealing with, what secrets they were hiding, what skeletons rattled in their closets. Carlos called me 3 days later, his voice grim and serious, his words heavy with foreboding. "Miss Charlotte, you need to sit down for this," he said, his tone urgent. What he told me made my blood run cold, chilling me to the bone. It was a story of betrayal, deceit, and murder. A tale of darkness and depravity that would forever alter my perception of the world. Patricia wasn't born rich. She'd married into money, carefully orchestrating her ascent into the upper echelons of society, clawing her way to the top with ruthless ambition and a complete lack of scruples. But here's the kicker: George had been married before. His first wife was named Catherine, and she died 23 years ago in what was ruled an accident. She fell down the stairs in their sprawling mansion, a tragic accident that cut her life short and left George a grieving widower. Patricia married George 6 months later, conveniently stepping into the role of grieving widow and seamlessly integrating herself into his wealthy lifestyle. The timing was suspicious, to say the least. Catherine's family, however, wasn't convinced. They suspected foul play, claimed it was murder, fueled by rumors that Patricia had been having an affair with George long before Catherine's death, that the timing was just too convenient to be a coincidence. They even tried to sue, seeking justice for their daughter and exposing the truth behind her suspicious death. But the case mysteriously disappeared. Money changed hands, silencing the whispers and burying the truth beneath a mountain of legal jargon and strategically placed influence. Evidence vanished, witnesses suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen, and the case was quietly closed, another casualty of wealth and influence. And Sophia, she wasn't just Julian's best friend and business partner. She was Patricia's niece, her loyal protégé, her willing accomplice. She was Patricia's eyes and ears, her weapon of choice. Patricia had strategically planted her in Julian's life when he was still in college, grooming her to be his confidant, his advisor, his puppet master. She was a master manipulator, expertly pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Every major decision Julian made, Sophia subtly influenced, guiding him down the path that Patricia had carefully laid out for him, ensuring that he remained firmly under their control. Every girlfriend he'd had before me, Sophia had systematically destroyed, eliminating any potential threat to Patricia's carefully laid plans, ensuring that Julian remained available for her ultimate scheme. One girl lost her job after Sophia made a phone call to her employer, spreading false rumors and fabricated lies, ruining her reputation and leaving her unemployable. Another had her apartment lease mysteriously terminated, leaving her homeless and desperate, with nowhere to turn. A third one was offered a substantial sum of money to leave the city and never contact Julian again. A deal she couldn't refuse, a temptation too great to resist. The pieces were starting to fall into place, revealing a disturbing picture of manipulation, deceit, and cold-blooded calculation. But something still felt off, a nagging feeling that I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, a key element that would unlock the full extent of their depravity. So, I kept digging, determined to unearth the truth, no matter how painful it might be, no matter what secrets it might reveal. I was determined to expose their lies and bring them to justice, even if it meant sacrificing everything I had. 1 week before my wedding, Julian started acting strange, his behavior erratic and secretive, his demeanor shifting from loving and attentive to distant and aloof. He'd get phone calls late at night and lock himself in the bathroom to answer them, his voice hushed and strained, his words indecipherable. He'd come home smelling faintly of expensive perfume that wasn't mine, a scent that lingered in the air like a guilty secret, a fragrant betrayal. When I dared to question him about it, he'd snap at me, his eyes flashing with anger, his voice laced with defensiveness. "Why are you being so paranoid, Charlotte? Why are you checking up on me? Don't you trust me?" Then I found a hotel receipt in his jacket pocket. A small, insignificant piece of paper that shattered my world into a million pieces. A tangible symbol of his infidelity. I was taking his suits to the dry cleaner when it fell out, fluttering to the floor like a fallen leaf, a silent confession of his betrayal. The Rosewood Hotel, presidential suite, charged 3 times in 1 month, always on Wednesday evenings. We lived together. Why would he need a hotel room? The answer was obvious, but the confirmation was a punch to the gut. Driven by a mixture of fear and desperation, I called the hotel, pretending to be his assistant, asking to confirm his standing reservation, using a fabricated name and a trembling voice. The woman on the phone said cheerfully, "Of course, Mr. Pierce has the presidential suite every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to midnight. Should I continue the reservation after his wedding?" My hands were shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. I thanked her, my voice barely a whisper, and hung up, the reality of his betrayal crashing down on me like a tidal wave. Then, consumed by a desperate need for answers, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went to Julian's office at midnight, using the spare key he'd given me for emergencies. A key I now realized was a symbol of his manipulation. A tool he'd used to lull me into a false sense of security. His computer was still on, logged in, as if he'd just stepped away for a moment. The screen flickered with the glow of unanswered emails and unfinished projects, a silent testament to his double life. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, a deep sense of shame at invading his privacy, but I pushed past it, driven by the need to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be, no matter what secrets it might reveal. I looked through his files, navigating the labyrinth of folders and documents, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. That's when I found the folder labeled C Project, a simple label that belied the devastation it contained. Inside were dozens of documents about me, meticulously compiled background checks going back years, detailed financial investigations, even a family tree search tracing my lineage back generations. He'd been investigating me for months, trying to find out if I had any hidden money or assets, if I was secretly hiding a fortune, if I was more than just the struggling graphic designer I pretended to be. But all his reports said the same thing. Subject appears to have minimal assets and no significant family wealth. He didn't know. He actually didn't know who I was, the extent of my family's wealth and power, the empire that lay hidden beneath my carefully constructed disguise. He'd fallen for my carefully constructed facade, believing I was nothing more than a struggling graphic designer, a naive little charity case he could easily manipulate and control. He'd underestimated me. Then I opened his messages, and my world shattered into a million pieces, the fragments of my broken heart scattered across the digital landscape of his betrayal. There were hundreds of texts between him and Sophia, a digital trail of betrayal and deceit, a testament to their long-standing affair and their carefully orchestrated scheme. 3 more days and she signs the prenup. Then we're safe. One text from Sophia read, her words dripping with venom, her intentions laid bare. Julian's response was chillingly indifferent. "I almost feel bad. She really thinks I love her." He expressed no remorse, no guilt, only a cold, calculating detachment. Sophia again, her words a callous dismissal. "Please, she's a nobody. You're doing her a favor by giving her a life she could never afford." Julian, his true feelings finally exposed. "Sophia, once we're married and she signs everything, we can go back to normal. I miss you, babe." Sophia, echoing his sentiment. "Julian, I miss you too. Can't wait until this is over and we can stop pretending." I sat in his office chair, staring at those messages, and something inside me died. Or maybe it was reborn, forged in the fires of betrayal and fueled by a burning desire for revenge. I don't know, but I wasn't crying. I was calm, eerily calm, as if I'd been preparing for this moment my entire life. The shock and the pain had numbed me, leaving me with a cold, unwavering focus. I kept reading, delving deeper into the rabbit hole of their deception, determined to uncover every last secret, every last lie. The family group chat was even more damning, a digital cesspool of cruelty and contempt, a forum for their twisted jokes and malicious gossip. Patricia, I can't believe we have to pretend to like this trash for 3 more days. She chews with her mouth open like an animal. George, at least the prenup protects everything. When Julian divorces her in a year, she gets $50,000 and a used car. That's generous for someone like her. Sophia, I'm taking bets on how long it takes before she signs. I give her 2 minutes after the ceremony. She'll be so grateful to be married, she won't even read it. Patricia, the stupid girl probably thinks she's Cinderella. Wait until she realizes she married into a business arrangement. Julian, let's just get through this. Once it's legal, Charlotte becomes useful in other ways. The Hong Kong investors want to work with family men. She's perfect for that image. Stable wife, eventual kids, the whole package. They weren't just planning to humiliate me, to use me for Julian's business image, to discard me like a used toy. They were planning something much darker, something far more sinister, and I was standing right in the middle of it, completely oblivious to the danger that lurked around every corner. Then I found something that made everything else look like child's play, a piece of evidence that solidified my resolve and ignited a firestorm of fury within me, a spark that would set their world ablaze. It was an email from Patricia to a lawyer, the subject line, "Prenup modification urgent." The email read, "Modify the prenup as discussed. Make sure Clause 7B is activated and properly documented. We can't have any complications." I frantically searched through the prenup document, my fingers trembling as I scanned the legal jargon, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I found it, Clause 7B. It stated that if Julian died within the first year of marriage, everything would go to his designated beneficiary, not his wife, his designated beneficiary. It was a death clause, a silent killer lurking in the fine print. And when I checked who that was, I saw Sophia's name, emblazoned in bold letters, a clear indication of their deadly intentions. There was also a life insurance policy attached, a staggering $10 million payable to Sophia if anything happened to Julian in the first year of our marriage, a reward for her loyalty and a guarantee of her silence. They were planning to kill him. They were planning to kill Julian, and I was about to walk right into their trap. They hadn't simply intended to humiliate me. Their plans reached far beyond using me as a prop for Julian's carefully constructed business image. A darker scheme, something truly sinister, was unfolding, and I was unwittingly at its epicenter, blind to the peril lurking just out of sight. Their intention was murder, and I was slated to be the perfect, unsuspecting alibi. After 8 years of silence, I reached for the phone and dialed my father. It was 3 in the morning, yet he answered immediately, his voice tight with concern. "Charlotte, baby girl, what's wrong?" "Dad," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice despite the maelstrom within. "I need the family lawyers. Every single one of them. I need them at my apartment in 2 hours. And Dad, you have to trust me on this. I can't explain now, but I promise you, I know what I'm doing." There was a heavy pause as he weighed my words, the urgency and resolve in my tone undoubtedly piercing through the static. Finally, he spoke. "I'll be there in an hour." True to his word, my father arrived at my cramped, modest apartment with what could only be described as a small army. 6 of the most brilliant and, yes, ruthless lawyers in the country, 2 investigators with reputations that preceded them, and my mother, her face stained with tears and etched with worry. She crushed me in a hug, her sobs audible, her tears soaking into the fabric of my cheap Target dress. "My baby," she choked out. "We've missed you so much." I hugged her back, a pang of guilt twisting in my gut. But there was no time for sentimentality, no time for the reunion we both desperately craved. "Not yet. I love you, Mom, but we have work to do," I said, gently disengaging. Fueled by lukewarm coffee and pure adrenaline, we worked through the night, piecing together the fragments of truth and formulating a strategy. My legal team devoured every piece of evidence I had uncovered, scrutinizing documents, dissecting messages, and tracing financial records. They discovered that Julian's company wasn't just successful. It was a house of cards built on a foundation of elaborate fraud, supported by fabricated investors, embezzled funds, and a labyrinthine network of offshore accounts spanning 3 different countries. Patricia and George were his accomplices, laundering money through their legitimate businesses, disguising the illicit transactions, and shielding him from any unwanted attention. Sophia, the supposed financial whiz, was cooking the books, creating false reports, concealing transactions, and manipulating figures to project an image of profitability and success. They had constructed an empire on lies, defrauding 17 investors who had entrusted them with their life savings. 12 of those investors had lost everything, their hopes and dreams reduced to ashes, their futures irrevocably destroyed. One of them was a man named Mr. Peterson. He was 67 years old, newly retired, and he had poured his entire retirement fund into Julian's company, drawn in by promises of high returns and financial security. He based his decision on the falsified reports that Sophia had meticulously crafted, trusting her supposed expertise and believing in the company's legitimacy. When the money vanished, when he realized he had been swindled out of everything he owned, he couldn't face his wife, couldn't bring himself to confess that he had gambled away their future. He left her a note, a tear-soaked apology expressing his failure and shame. Then, he walked into his garage, closed the door behind him, and never emerged. His wife found him 3 hours later, his dreams and his life extinguished in a cloud of exhaust fumes. I read the investigation report. The excruciating details of Mr. Peterson's tragic story seared into my memory, and a decision hardened within me. It wasn't enough to expose them. I was going to obliterate them, dismantle their carefully constructed empire brick by brick, and watch it crumble into dust. And I was going to ensure that the world saw them for who they truly were, monsters hiding behind masks of wealth and privilege. On my wedding day, I awoke at 5 a.m, the first rays of dawn painting the sky with delicate streaks of pink and gold. I didn't feel nervous, didn't experience the butterflies that brides are so often described as feeling. Instead, I felt a powerful surge of determination, a warrior preparing for battle. I slipped into my wedding dress, a custom-designed masterpiece that my father had secretly commissioned from a renowned designer in Paris. A symphony of silk and lace that cost $50,000, an amount that dwarfed the annual income of most people. I applied my makeup with meticulous care, each stroke deliberate and precise. As I gazed at my reflection, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like an avenging angel, a formidable warrior poised to unleash her righteous wrath. My father knocked softly on the door, his face a mixture of pride and apprehension. "Charlotte, are you absolutely sure about this?" he asked, his voice laced with paternal love and a protector's instinct. "We can call it off right now. We can handle this privately, quietly, without all of the public spectacle." I shook my head, my gaze locking with his. "No, Daddy. They need to be exposed publicly so they can't hurt anyone else. They need to be held accountable for their actions, to prevent others from becoming victims of their greed." He nodded slowly, his gaze unwavering. "Then let's go to war," he said, his voice resonating with steely resolve. The wedding venue was a breathtaking spectacle, a lavish display of opulence and extravagance. 300 guests, the crème de la crème of society, filled the space, their designer clothes and sparkling jewels reflecting the shimmering chandelier light. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, was that 50 of them were my people. Lawyers, investigators, even 2 FBI agents who had been meticulously building a case against Julian's company for months, patiently gathering evidence, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. My evidence had provided them with the final, crucial pieces of the puzzle, the evidence they needed to bring the entire house of cards crashing down. Patricia barged into my dressing room without knocking, her sense of entitlement radiating from her like a toxic cloud. She surveyed my dress, her lips curling into a disdainful sneer. "My God, that dress is so understated. I suppose we can't expect taste from someone like you. You simply don't have the pedigree." She grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin, and leaned in close, her breath reeking of expensive perfume and malice. "Listen carefully, you little nobody. After you sign those papers today, you belong to us. You'll smile when we tell you to. You'll speak when we allow it, and you'll disappear when we're done with you. Do you understand? I focused on her hand on my arm, on the angry red marks she was creating, and a wave of revulsion washed over me. Then, I met her cold, dead eyes and smiled. A slow, deliberate smile that sent a visible shiver down her spine. Patricia, do you know what happens to people who threaten a Westbrook? Confusion flickered across her face, her brow furrowing with uncertainty. What are you talking about? You're about to find out. Front row seat. The music began, the traditional wedding march filling the air. My father took my arm, his grip firm and reassuring, and we walked down the aisle, through a gauntlet of judging eyes and whispered speculations. I saw the precise moment Patricia recognized my father from magazine covers and news articles. The moment the truth about my identity dawned on her. Her face drained of color, her eyes widening in shock and dawning realization. She knew. She finally knew. And it was too late to stop what was about to happen. Julian stood at the altar in his impeccably tailored gray suit, looking smug and confident, utterly oblivious to the storm that was about to break. Sophia sat in the front row, wearing a cream-colored dress that bordered on bridal, smirking at me with an air of smug satisfaction, as if she had already won. I reached the altar and took Julian's hands. They felt cold and clammy, as if he instinctively sensed the impending doom. Or perhaps that was just me, projecting my own icy resolve onto him. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice booming through the microphone. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Julian and Charlotte. Julian was squeezing my hands, whispering insincere sweet nothings in my ear, completely unaware of the catastrophe about to unfold. You look so beautiful, Charlotte. I can't wait to start our life together. I whispered back, my voice laced with a chilling undertone. Me neither. It's going to be very memorable. When the officiant reached the vows, he turned to Julian and asked, Do you, Julian, take Charlotte to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part? Julian smiled widely, his eyes sparkling with anticipation, and said confidently, I do. Then the officiant turned to me, his gaze questioning. And do you, Charlotte, take Julian to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part? I paused, allowing the silence to hang in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in the room. The entire room fell silent, all eyes fixed on me, waiting for my response. Julian squeezed my hands harder, a hint of nervousness creeping into his voice. Charlotte, he whispered, his voice barely audible. What are you waiting for? I pulled my hands away from his, severing the physical connection, and reached into my dress, retrieving my phone, the weapon I had been waiting to unleash. Before I answer that question, I said clearly, my voice carrying through the silent room. Everyone here needs to see something. I connected my phone to the projector, watching as the screen behind us flickered to life, ready to display the carefully curated evidence I had spent weeks gathering. The screen that was supposed to display our love story slideshow, a montage of carefully staged photos and fabricated memories, was about to become a canvas for truth, a stage for exposing the lies that had been festering beneath the surface. Julian's face morphed from confused to ashen in approximately 3 seconds, his eyes widening in dawning horror. Charlotte, what are you doing? He hissed, his voice laced with panic. Patricia stood up from her seat, her face a mask of fury. This is completely inappropriate, she shrieked, her voice echoing through the room. Turn that off immediately. I ignored them both, my focus laser-locked on the projector screen, ready to unleash my carefully orchestrated plan. The first image appeared on the screen, a digital bomb detonating in the heart of their carefully constructed world. It was a text message from Sophia to Julian, displayed in large, undeniable text. I love you. I hate watching you pretend with her. It's killing me." A collective gasp swept through the room. Sophia jumped to her feet, her face contorted with rage. "This is fake!" she screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "She faked those messages. It's not true." I smiled at her, a cold, predatory smile that sent a shiver down her spine. "Is it fake, Sophia? Should I show the videos, too? I have hours of security footage from your apartment." Very interesting footage, indeed. The next slide appeared, a devastating blow that landed squarely on Julian's reputation. Hotel receipts, dozens of them, all from the Rosewood Hotel, all on Wednesday evenings, all charged to Julian's credit card, a blatant display of his infidelity. Then came more text messages, the digital evidence of their betrayal mounting with each passing second. Julian to Sophia, "I almost feel bad. She really thinks I love her." Sophia to Julian, "She's a nobody. You're doing her a favor by giving her a life she could never afford." Julian grabbed my arm, his grip desperate. "Charlotte, stop this. Please, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." I wrenched my arm away, recoiling from his touch as if it were poison. "Explain what, Julian? Explain how you've been sleeping with your cousin while planning to marry me? Explain how you've been lying to me for 2 years, manipulating me, and using me for your own selfish purposes?" That got a reaction from the crowd. The murmured whispers and shocked exclamations intensified, morphing into a cacophony of outrage and disbelief. The carefully curated facade of their perfect lives was crumbling before their very eyes. But I wasn't finished. I was just getting started. The next slide revealed the family group chat, the digital record of their cruelty and contempt, their true feelings finally exposed for all to see. Every cruel message, every snide remark, every derogatory comment displayed in large text for 300 people to read, to understand, to be horrified by. Patricia calling me trash, George calling me an animal, Sophia making bets about how quickly I'd sign the prenup, Julian saying I was useful for his business image. I allowed each message to remain on the screen long enough for people to absorb its meaning, to be disgusted by the people they thought they knew. Patricia was screaming now, a wild, hysterical sound that pierced through the chaos. She was attempting to reach the projector, her eyes blazing with fury, desperate to shut down the flow of damaging information. "Turn that off," she shrieked. "You have no right. This is private." I regarded her calmly, my voice devoid of emotion. "Private? You want to talk about privacy? How about we discuss what you did to George's first wife? How about we expose the secrets you've been burying for over 20 years? That revelation caused George to slump in his chair, burying his face in his hands as if he could simply disappear. When the authorities approached him, he offered no resistance. The transformation was shocking. He appeared to have aged decades in mere moments. Sophia, desperate, attempted to flee through the kitchen, but my cousin Mark, who had been strategically positioned to guard that exit, intercepted her. She fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, claws and heels flying until the agents managed to subdue her. As they placed Julian in handcuffs, his eyes locked onto mine, brimming with tears. "Charlotte, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I can explain everything. I do love you. I swear I love you. Just tell them they've made a mistake." I moved closer, close enough that my words would be for his ears alone. "You want to know something ironic, Julian?" I asked, my voice low and steady. "You spent months investigating me, digging into my life, and you found absolutely nothing. You dismissed me as insignificant, a nobody." I leaned in further, whispering directly into his ear, each word laced with deliberate intent. "My full name is Charlotte Marie Westbrook. My family owns a significant portion of this city. My father's company is worth more than anything you could ever dream of achieving. You didn't marry up, you foolish man. I was marrying down. So far down I needed a damn ladder." I stepped back to observe the impact of my words. The realization crashed over him like a physical blow. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, his face draining of color and replaced by a sickly gray hue. "Westbrook?" he whispered, the word barely audible. As in Westbrook Industries? The Westbrook real estate empire? I gave a slow, deliberate nod. I'm worth more than your entire family combined, Julian. I could have bought your fraudulent little company with my monthly allowance. His legs buckled beneath him. The agents were forced to hold him upright. But why? He gasped, his voice filled with desperation. Why did you pretend? A genuine laugh escaped me then, a sound that felt liberating, empowering. Because I wanted someone to love me for me, Julian. Instead, I found a con artist who thought he was the one doing the conning. The irony is almost poetic, wouldn't you say? Patricia, being dragged past me in handcuffs, spat in my direction, the spittle narrowly missing my face. You sneaky little witch, she snarled. You played us all. I walked over to her with deliberate calm. You grabbed my arm earlier, Patricia. You left marks. I pulled up my sleeve, exposing the angry red bruises to everyone, ensuring that the officers had a clear view. That's assault. Add it to her charges, please. Then, I leaned close to her ear, my voice a silken threat. You told me marriages fall apart, and I'd leave with nothing. You were half right. This marriage did fall apart. But you're the one leaving with less than nothing. You're leaving with a prison sentence. Enjoy it. As they led Sophia past me, she made one last, desperate attempt. We would have destroyed you, she shrieked, tears streaking her mascara down her face in grotesque rivulets. I didn't even flinch. You can't destroy what you never had access to. I was always 10 steps ahead. Every document you forged, every account you hid, every lie you told, my investigators documented everything. You didn't lose today, Sophia. You were never even in the game. After they had taken all 4 of them away, the room felt strangely empty. I turned to face the remaining guests. Some were crying, some looked shell-shocked, and a surprising number were actually cheering. I took the microphone from the stunned officiant. I apologize that your Saturday was wasted on this disaster, I said, my voice amplified throughout the room. But I couldn't allow these people to continue hurting others. Julian's company defrauded 17 investors. 12 of them lost their life savings. 3 of them attempted suicide. 1 of them succeeded. I paused, allowing the weight of my words to sink in. The room was utterly silent. His name was Mr. Peterson. He was 67 years old. He invested his retirement money in Julian's company based on the fake reports that Sophia created. When the money disappeared, he couldn't face his wife. He left a note saying he'd failed her. Then he walked into his garage and never came out. His wife found him 3 hours later. My voice cracked, but I pushed on. I could have gone to the FBI privately. I could have had them arrested quietly. But then you wouldn't know. Their friends wouldn't know. Their business partners wouldn't know. I needed everyone to see exactly who these people are. Monsters wearing expensive suits and designer dresses. I took a deep breath, composing myself. You might think this is a victory for me, but I'm standing here in a wedding dress with no wedding. I spent 2 years loving someone who never existed. I planned a future with a man who saw me as a mark. I wanted love to be real so badly that I hid who I was. And in hiding myself, I attracted exactly what I was afraid of. People who only care about money. Then, something unexpected surfaced. A truth I hadn't planned to reveal. Something that simply burst forth from the depths of my being. But there's something else none of you know. Not even my family. I took another deep breath, bracing myself. I'm pregnant. I found out 1 week ago. I'm carrying the child of a man who's going to prison. A man who never loved me. A man whose mother told me I wasn't worthy of breathing the same air as them. Audible gasps filled the room. My mother stood up from her seat, tears streaming down her face. I continued, my voice gaining strength. This baby will grow up knowing their father is a criminal. But they'll also grow up knowing their mother was strong enough to do the right thing, even when it hurt. Julian, halfway to the exit in handcuffs, abruptly stopped struggling with the agents. Charlotte, we're having a baby? His voice broke, choked with emotion. Tears streamed down his face. I know you won't believe me, but in the beginning, It was real. Those first 3 months, before Sophia got in my head, before my mother poisoned everything. I really did love you. I was going to tell them all to go to hell and just be with you. He was sobbing now, a raw, ugly crying in front of everyone. But then they showed me their investigation on you. They convinced me you were also hiding something, that you were also a con artist. They made me paranoid and stupid, and I destroyed the only real thing I ever had. He looked at my stomach, his face contorted with anguish. We're having a baby, and I'm never going to meet them. They're going to grow up hating me, and I deserve it. I deserve all of it. I walked up to him one last time. Part of me, a small, stupid part, felt a pang of sympathy for him. You want to know the saddest part, Julian? If you had just trusted me, if you had just asked, I would have told you the truth. I was planning to tell you everything after the wedding. I was going to surprise you with who I really was. We could have had everything, but you chose them over me. You chose lies over truth. And now our child will pay the price. Then, I pulled one final document from my dress. A trump card I'd been saving for the perfect moment. This is a DNA test. I had it done 3 days ago when I found out I was pregnant. Julian looked utterly confused. So did everyone else. I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a sad, tired smile. The smile of someone who was done with everything. The baby isn't yours, Julian. His face went completely blank. What? Remember that work conference I went to 6 weeks ago? The medical technology conference in Boston? The one you said you were too busy to attend because you were meeting with investors? I paused for effect. Those investors were fake, by the way. You were at the Rosewood Hotel with Sophia that night. I called you from Boston, crying, because I felt alone in a city where I didn't know anyone. And you hung up on me because you said you were busy. Understanding began to dawn on his face, horror replacing the confusion. I met someone at that conference. His name is Andrew. He's a pediatric surgeon. We sat next to each other at a dinner. We talked for hours about real things, meaningful things. He told me about saving children's lives. I told him about my real dreams, my real fears. And for the first time in 2 years, someone actually listened to me. Tears were streaming down my cheeks now, but I kept talking. We spent one night together. Just one. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And I felt so incredibly guilty afterward. I almost told you 100 times. But now I'm glad. Because this baby doesn't have to be connected to you at all. Julian looked as though I'd physically stabbed him. So, you cheated on me? His voice was small, broken. You're standing here exposing me for cheating. And you cheated, too? I nodded slowly. Yes, I did. I made a mistake one night when I was lonely, and you were with your mistress. The difference is I felt guilty. I was going to confess. You never were. I looked at him one last time, my gaze unwavering. So, you see, Julian, you lost a wife who was secretly rich. You lost your freedom. You lost your company. You lost. Your family's legacy is in ruins because of you, Julian. And that baby, it was never yours to lose. That's the price you pay when you treat people's hearts like toys. I turned to leave, but a final thought struck me, a final twist of the knife. Oh, and one last thing. Andrew, the doctor? He knew exactly who I was from the start. My father introduced us at a charity gala 3 years ago. He was interested in me then when he knew I was wealthy, and he was still interested when he thought I was broke. After the conference, he sought me out, told me he couldn't get me out of his head. We've been talking, Julian. He knows about the baby. He wants to be a part of our child's life. He wants to be a father. I watched as the color drained from Julian's face, leaving him utterly devastated. That, Julian, is what real love looks like. Someone who values you, who wants you in their life, not someone who just sees you as a means to an end. Maybe you should take notes for your next relationship. Oh wait, you'll be in a cell for the next decade and a half. Never mind. The agents took him away, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Patricia was still shrieking about legal repercussions, about how we would all suffer. George looked like he'd aged decades in a matter of minutes, his face gaunt and ashen. Sophia was a whirlwind of venom. spitting curses at everyone within earshot. I stood there in my wedding dress, a stark white against the chaos, in front of 300 stunned guests, and I felt an incredible lightness, a sense of liberation I hadn't experienced in years. My mother rushed to me, engulfing me in a fierce, protective hug. My father was right behind her, his eyes brimming with tears. "I'm so proud of you, Charlotte," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You're stronger than all of us." And then I saw Jennifer, my sister. I hadn't even known she was planning to come. She approached me slowly, cautiously, and for the first time in 8 long years she spoke. Her voice was raspy, unused, but clear. "You did it?" she said simply, her eyes filled with a complex mix of admiration and profound relief. "You did what I couldn't. You fought back." And then she wrapped her arms around me, and we both wept, years of unspoken pain and shared trauma finally released, flowing freely between us. That was 6 months ago. The journey since then has been nothing short of transformative. Julian received a 15-year sentence for fraud and conspiracy. Patricia got 12 years for money laundering and conspiracy. George received a 10-year sentence, but suffered a debilitating stroke in prison just 3 months in. Sophia got 18 years. Her sentence increased due to her attempts to destroy evidence after her arrest. They all filed appeals, grasping at straws. They all lost. I'm now 7 months pregnant, feeling my baby girl kicking inside me as I speak. Andrew is at every single doctor's appointment, holding my hand, asking insightful questions. We're taking things slow, navigating the complexities of our evolving relationship, figuring out what we mean to each other. But he's wonderful. He's patient, kind, and deeply honest. He holds my hand during ultrasounds, his eyes welling up as he watches her dance on the screen. I personally compensated all 17 investors that Julian defrauded. It cost me $42 million, a sum that made my father's hair turn even whiter. But I didn't care. When I handed Mr. Peterson's widow her check, she broke down in tears and told me, "You gave my husband justice, Charlotte. You gave him peace. That was worth every single penny." My sister Jennifer is speaking more and more. Not constantly, not effortlessly, but she's trying. She's in therapy, bravely confronting her trauma, piece by painful piece. She told me just last week that witnessing me stand up to Julian, seeing me reclaim my power, gave her hope that maybe, just maybe, she could heal too. We're in the initial stages of planning a foundation together, dedicated to helping victims of financial fraud. We're tentatively calling it Catherine's House, in memory of George's first wife, a woman who was also a victim in her own way. People constantly ask me if I regret going undercover, if I regret concealing my identity. They ask if I should have just been honest from the beginning. And honestly, I don't have a definitive answer, because pretending to be someone else allowed me to see people for who they truly were. My father, my mother, my sister, my friend Maya, and a man I barely knew but who chose integrity above all else. They're still here. Everyone else is gone. Sometimes the worst day of your life turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you, because it strips away the illusions and reveals the truth, raw and unfiltered. And truth, no matter how painful, is always preferable to a beautiful lie. If you're interested in hearing about Julian's prison letters, the ones where he's suddenly begging for forgiveness, leave a comment saying letters. If you want to know more about Andrew and our relationship, comment Andrew. And if you think I was wrong to deceive them or wrong to expose them so publicly, I genuinely value your perspective. Comment and let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because my life is anything but predictable. And trust me, the story doesn't end here. There's Patricia's secret daughter, for example, the one nobody knew existed, who showed up at my door 3 months ago, fueled by a thirst for revenge. And then there's Sophia, currently trying to write a tell-all memoir from prison, undoubtedly filled with her own distorted version of events. But those are stories for another day. I'm Charlotte Westbrook. Thank you for joining me on this journey, for listening to my story. And always remember, never let anyone make you feel small, especially when you're standing on a mountain they can't even see. I'll see you in the next video.